Welcome to Let's Talk Cardano, presented by the Cardano Foundation. In each episode, we delve deep into the transformative world of blockchain technology. Join us as we explore how blockchain is reshaping industries from finance to supply chain and talk with some of the key pioneers at the forefront of this revolution. All right here on Let's Talk Cardano.
In this episode of Let's Talk Cardano, we talk with GLEIF leaders about the future of trusted organizational identity. Together, they explain how verifiable digital credentials can boost security, reduce fraud, and make global business interactions more reliable in a fast-moving digital world.
Thank you for joining us today on Let's Talk Cardano podcast. My name is Jeremy Furster. I'm the Global Enterprise Adoption Lead at Cardano Foundation. And today's episode is about the values of GLEIF and organizational identity. And today, I'm joined by three key members of GLEIF, which is the Global Legal Entity Identifier Foundation. And we have Karla McKenna, who is the head of standards at GLEIF and the managing director of GLEIF Americas, Christoph Schneider, head of IT development and operations, and Kevin Griffin, VLEI software developer team lead. Hello, everyone. How are you today?
Good. How are you?
Good. Thank you, Jeremy.
Hi, Jeremy. Good to meet you.
So, Karla, I'd like to ask you a question to frame our discussion, which is, why is trusted organizational identity so critical right now in 2025?
So to participate in and to benefit from a global digital economy, business entities must have the capability to be universally recognized within their nation states, domains, markets, as well as across borders. So this is the case between businesses and businesses, businesses and consumers, and businesses and the public sector. So having and being able to use a verifiable, trusted global identity would facilitate more efficient and secure areas like international trade, accelerate economic growth, help address the range of global challenges like financial and corporate fraud, financial inclusion, friction in international capital flows, the burden of environmental compliance, money laundering, and the financing of terrorist activities. So this is why GLEIF undertook to extend our efforts in the digital organizational identity space to develop the Verifiable Legal Entity Identifier, or VLEI, with the LEI as the basis for the validated identification of legal entities, to be able to verify the identity of an organization, as well as the people that represent that organization, both inside and outside of the boundaries of that organization.
Well, thank you. I believe that outside of the technology itself, when we speak about digital identity, we must speak about governance and the actual assurance process that exists. And what were the important considerations and factors that went into developing the governance framework for the VLEI?
Well, first, GLEIF wanted to leverage the governance for the LEI as a strong foundation for the VLEI. The LEI has a rigorous and documented validation process that our network of LEI issuers are required to follow. And these requirements are documented and public, called the State Transition and Validation Rules, which form the basis of the operational requirements on which the LEI issuers are evaluated during their initial accreditation and must maintain to keep their accreditation, which is checked on an annual basis. So LEI issuers are accredited in each jurisdiction in which they want to operate, and specifically also for one legal entity, legal form category, which is funds. LEI issuers must develop their expertise in validating the formation and existence of different types of legal entities. So the LEI is a validation that the entity exists and that the entity is who they say that they are. It is this that serves as the strong foundation for the first piece of the VLEI, which is the identification component of the VLEI. Second, it was important to GLEIF to rely on a formal framework on which to document the governance for the VLEI. So being part of and contributing to the development of a strong governance framework was a major motivation in GLEIF deciding to become a contributing founding member of the Trust Over IP Foundation, which it was called then, Trust Over IP now. And when developing this governance framework, I was able to learn and understand the various and varied components that must be considered when documenting a governance model, as well as to contribute directly to some of the components of the model, particularly the credential frameworks and the risk assessment. So the governance framework from an ecosystem perspective, an ecosystem governance framework for the VLEI, was the first of its kind. And the governance around the governance process within Trust Over IP makes it a living, breathing document, like a biological ecosystem that is updated and reviewed on an active basis.
Now, with this comprehensive governance framework in place, what is the value of GLEIF developing a standard ecosystem governance framework rather than each organization developing their own?
Actually, GLEIF doesn't see this as an either-or situation. We developed the ecosystem governance framework for the VLEI so that standard credentials, processes, and requirements are documented for the decentralized, verifiable organizational credentials that we developed. We then expected that communities of users, consortiums, organizations, applications, considering the use of the VLEI, would then document their requirements, processes, and engagements in their own governance frameworks, including where and how VLEIs would be leveraged in these processes and engagements.
Okay, I see that it's quite flexible on the implementation while remaining to the core tenets and values of the framework. And so, Karla, did the governance influence the technical architecture, or was it the other way around?
Many considerations went into the final choice of technical architecture chosen for the VLEI, which governance being among these. So the global LEI system was founded on many principles, one of which was the concept of being a public good. So LEI codes and the validated reference data that's in the global LEI system are required to be accessible and free to all data users without paywalls, registration, or licensing restriction. And it was this public good aspect that contributed to the choice of technical architecture based on KERI, which would allow GLEIF to make the VLEI interoperable with other technical architectures, which has been realized in evidence most notably with collaborations with partners most recently in the blockchain community. Another governance consideration was to be able to develop the VLEI as a high assurance level credential. The rigorous security that's part of the KERI suite of protocols, things like key rotation and pre-rotation, which make recoverability possible, weighted threshold multi-signatures, which allow processes to be put in place so that no one can act alone, and decentralized automated verification of key state and non-repudiability, just to name a few. And last, I will note that from the beginning, GLEIF had the ambition and requirement to be able to link organizations with persons in their roles representing and engaging with organizations. And this made the credential choice, the type of credential choice, ACDCs, easy, since organizations don't act on their own. People act on their behalf or with them. So this also empowers the VLEI to support in a digital credential one of the key governance realities of organizations, which is delegation of authority. So therefore, the KERI suite of protocols and technical architecture had all that GLEIF needed.
Thank you, Karla. I think it'd be great now to switch gears to Christoph and to speak about more on the technical details of the architecture and VLEI infrastructure. While KERI is the chosen protocol for today, what was the process like selecting this architecture for VLEI?
So originally, when GLEIF embarked on the VLEI journey, we had performed several proofs of concept to find the right blockchain-based identity solution, which was state-of-the-art back at the time. And these POCs were all successful, technically speaking, but revealed also an issue of ledger lock-in. That means that all users of VLEI would have had to make the decision for one platform. And when we learned early about KERI, the key event receipt infrastructure, as a strong key management protocol, which does not need a blockchain, but can connect to any, It quickly was clear to us that this must be the approach for an inclusive system like the global LEI system and its users.
Great. Thank you. And Kevin, what key features of KERI ensures that VLEI is a highly secure identity layer?
So there's many features in KERI, and there's not just one singular one that you can identify. KERI often acts as a protocol. It's got a layered approach to all this. I think most notably the features of autonomic identifiers. So identifiers that can survive key rotations. In most identity worlds now, an identifier is derived from essentially a public key. And with KERI, we have a different approach using pre-rotation that allows an identifier to remain unchanged, but the signing keys behind it are allowed to change over time. That leads us to, well, how do you know what the change over time is? And KERI has a different feature called key event logs, where we record each interaction, each rotation, each commitment event. They're all in a hash chain data structure that anyone can query and verify for themselves. So we're kind of moving away from trusting static signatures to being able to send my entire event log to someone to say, hey, you can go away and verify for yourself. You don't have to trust me. You can go away and verify yourself everything that's happened and know the state of my keys at the time that I signed something and gave it to you. Currently in the world of, digital identity, we have static, or what we call ephemeral signatures. You have no way to go back and look at a signature and say, what was the state of this key when it was signed? And that's one of the powers of KERI and key event logs that it provides. KERI also has a couple of other features in there. The additional infrastructure that we build and deploy that we call witnesses and watchers. Again, they allow people to discover and to verify my key state, and they allow us to detect what we call duplicity, or if a key has become compromised, which is a lot harder to do today. So inside of watches, it will watch for key state, and it allows you then to react to key state. And all of these start to layer upon layer, give you a much stronger basis for building an identifier, because ultimately that's what you're going to attach your reputation to. So GLEIF in and of itself has what we call a root of trust. That AID hasn't changed since we created it, but the keys behind it that do the signing are rotated, prophylactically. These are just some of the features that aren't present in other identity solutions right now.
And how does the VLEI implement organizational identity? And why is this an advantage compared to the traditional digital identity systems, specifically when we speak about verifying the authenticity of a digital ID?
So there's, again, a couple of different features inside of both KERI and inside of authentic chain data containers that allow you to build a complex graph of identity versus having a single issued credential. I think we've mentioned some of the terms before, but multi-signature events, so allowing two people to have control, or two or more, to have control over an identifier in a traditional, financial maker-checker scenario. So when we issue credentials in an organizational identity, we have someone who will create it and then someone who authorizes it. So those keys are acting together in a group. Inside of ACDCs, obviously the C is chained. So we're able to build credentials that are essentially label property graphs of delegated authority. So you can we have already implemented at GLEIF, we have a root of trust, and then we delegate to two other groups that operate at GLEIF that then do operations with our QBIs and as GLEIF as itself as a legal entity. And that structure inside of a graph just, again, isn't available normatively through any of the other credential types. So they provide a lot of features that we never found in others that we decided to, build in and add to ACDCs to satisfy the requirements of the ecosystem governance framework.
Yeah, in many ways, I like to say that KERI functions with the best features of a blockchain and without the worst features of a blockchain, such as ledger locking and being able to see the entire history of what's happened to an identity with its key management.
Yeah, absolutely. It takes us down a slightly different path of, explicitly trusting something because it's signed to what we call end verifiability, where you don't trust anything that someone gives you unless you can verify, all of the links in the chain, either cryptographically or against schemas. And it gives you a much higher level of confidence, especially when dealing with transactions.
Right. And another key element of KERI is its post-quantum strategy that's built into the protocol. Can you explain how KERI is delivering post-quantum, and how is this system also designed to be upgraded in the future?
Sure, absolutely. So specifically inside of Caesar, which is the mechanism with which we serialize our events, it of itself already has post-quantum secure features. So things we use by default, like 3 digests, which already, when used with enough entropy, already post-quantum secure. And that's what Dr. Smith likes to call white magic crypto. It's crypto that's been established for a long time. It's been vetted and trusted. We didn't create new crypto with KERI to kind of prove this and say, hey, look, trust our new crypto. The other parts are, because of the way Caesar is written, it's a self-framing format, which means we can describe ahead of time how to break apart a Caesar stream. The value of that is we can add in codes for certain types of signatures, so ED25519. We can add in different hashing mechanisms, so like 3, as I said. And then as new cryptography comes out that is vetted and published, so such as NIST's approach to Falcon and dilithium, we had some members of the community actually go ahead and add in Falcon as a new code table entry into Caesar and do a reference implementation of what it would look like to add in Falcon signatures and dilithium signatures into Caesar with literally not an extensive effort. So we're able to adopt new crypto as it becomes well known, but we certainly didn't invent any of our own.
Yeah, I think one of the most impressive aspects is that adding new levels of encryption is only requiring 10 lines of code to implement onto Caesar. Thank you, Kevin. And Christoph, I would like to go back to you to speak more about the interoperability aspects of VLEI. And a fun question is, what common misconceptions do you hear for nation state and multinational corporations when they're looking to adopt VLEI?
Yeah. So many times when we speak to representatives of nation states, the LEI and consequently the VLEI are considered a separate identity system to the national identity system, for example, a business register. But that's not the case. The LEI code comes with key reference data, which also includes information on where the organization has been registered and its local register number there. So the LEI is really a linchpin which connects to domestic authoritative sources. And this advantage of the LEI is accelerated by the availability of the VLEI. And it now can be used in peer-to-peer online transactions in a verifiable way. Multinational organizations have often a different perspective. They don't use the domestic identifier systems anyway due to their fragmentation and lack of interoperability when viewed from a multinational or global perspective. Here we often find proprietary or internal identity schemes like customer IDs or partner IDs. But these systems only work within one organization and are not shared across organization boundaries. This is where the VLEI brings interoperability across even or especially multinational organizations, as they follow a global standard available to all.
Which is very powerful for people to understand on this important distinction of not changing, but complementing digital identity programs. And the VLEI is also gaining momentum beyond a compliance solution for the financial industry. And why is it that so many other industries are choosing to rely on GLEIF and VLEI rather than try to build their own interoperability standards?
Yeah, we assume it is because the VLEI can be applied really anywhere. There is no specific focus to certain verticals or domains. In discussions with interested parties, some areas and applications came up more frequently than others, though. So these include, for example, global supply chains, where exporters, shippers, and importers of goods still work massively paper-based, which brings high efforts, time consumption, and costs with it. The VLEI could not only be used for the onboarding and identification and authorizations of parties involved, but also for digital signing of then paperless, that means digital documents. Related to this, also trade finance was brought up as an area where VLEIs could bring improvements through identifying applicants and supporting digital signatures or product traceability, where VLEIs could simplify the verifiable identification of producers, shippers, and other entities involved in the product journey, all leading to the ultimate payment for the goods, which by nature is cross-border. And another vertical mentioned frequently is the pharma industry, where hospitals, doctors, and patients could benefit from verifiable identification to ensure authenticity. And lastly, digital assets, which become more and more popular, are a natural use case for VLEI application to ensure identity and authority across various blockchains.
GLEIF also recently finished its first global VLEI hackathon, which had finalists announced in New York, Hong Kong, and Frankfurt. Can you tell us more about the findings from this hackathon and what you saw as innovative applications from participants?
Thanks for this question. We actually received indeed exactly 111 submissions globally, and it was a hard job to pre-select finalists, which were then forwarded to our external juries, which were constituted from business experts and technical experts. And these persons, again, had a really hard task to assess these finalists because all were really great and innovative. And we could easily spend hours now to talk about all of them, but let me just give you an overview. The submissions came from very diverse array of company types, geographics, and contexts. This suggests the awareness of the issue is really widespread. There are few boundaries to proposed solutions. We had firms and developers that submitted proposals from all continents. Countries included Brazil, the USA, Canada, the United Kingdom, Germany, Austria, the United Arab Emirates, India, Singapore, China, Taiwan, Korea, and many more. And we had submissions from well-established large organizations like the London Stock Exchange, LSE Group, from tech startups, but also from individual developers from across different sectors. Many initiatives came from the blockchain world with the recognition that a ledger-dependent identity was not able to support interoperability and trust across actors outside a given ledger. And this suggests for us a phase of evolution in the adoption of ledger infrastructures is being reached, at which independent governance solutions are leveraged, as it is done on the Cardano blockchain. Several legacy networks, such as GLEIF, were also interesting to see because they seem to be recognizing that data control is shifting toward decentralization and independent verification, and that identity control can be an enabler. Some proposals pointed out the gap between the many informal companies that have lots of data attributes, but no formal identity from government agencies or registers. And some of the finalists in Frankfurt showed that the potential to use verifiable credentials in compliance is quite widely recognized, and not only by tech firms, but regulators. It seems that more is happening behind the scenes there than is visible at first glance.
And what opportunities do you see for VLEI combined with blockchain?
So blockchains are a great way to settle transactions efficiently and fair without a central mediator. They don't replace the need for reliable identification of counterparties, though. And given the landscape of several blockchains emerging for various use cases, this identification should happen across chains. Here, the VLEI, with its capability to identify persons or even digital actors like AI agents, their role to an organization provides this reliable identification and thus authorization not only on one specific blockchain, but as a global standard which can be applied on any blockchain.
Yeah, I mean, here at Cardano Foundation with Viridian, we have also developed very specific modules for binding a VLEI into a smart contract, which can then be used through all sorts of blockchains for compliance purposes onto payments, such as our announcement that we made with Chainlink for the ACE product, automated compliance engine. And we also have a specific module as well where we can take the key event log of VLEI and create an on-chain tamper-proof audit trail of this information, similar to how witness pools act today in supporting the verification processes for VLEI. So while we don't believe that identity should live on a blockchain. Just like yourself, we do see many opportunities for how blockchain can enrich the ecosystem.
That's a fantastic example how this can be applied in practice.
And so what other opportunities do you see that exist for future development for the VLEI?
So given the qualification pipeline we currently have, I expect that the qualified VLEI issuer network to have grown and matured significantly. We started with 2 QVIs this year and now have 8, with 17 more in the pipeline at various stages of qualification. Additionally, I would think that the whole ecosystem will be much more complete than today. So next to issuers, there will be several solution providers leveraging the VLEI in their products, like Cardano does this now with the Veridiate wallet on the holder side. And we will see product launches on the verification side as early as first quarter of next year. And all these components will lead to the VLEI benefits becoming much more tangible for users and networks. And I think this will drive adoption.
Wow. I'd like to move to a rapid fire section. And Christoph, I'd start with you. With all of the excitement that we're seeing today, where do you see the VLEI market heading to by 2030? And what will be the core factors to this level of success?
I would say it needs to be understood that reliable organizational identity cannot be achieved in silos. Not in organizations, not in national states, not in regions. It's a global play, and only based on international standards and protocols, it can be achieved in an interoperable and consistent way. This is why LEI and VLEI are based on ISO standards, ISO 17442 parts 1 and 3, and leverage the open source KERI protocols that Kevin has highlighted earlier.
What potential barriers still need to be overcome in order to achieve these goals?
I think exactly that understanding that this is a topic that cannot be solved locally, but needs interoperability and a global approach. And I think we will see a paradigm shift actually in the global identity landscape. Given the rapid development of artificial intelligence, I expect that online fraud, for example, becomes an even bigger problem in the future. And I think we will shift from just trusting what we know, that we think we know who we deal with, to never trust, but always verify using reliable identity mechanisms like the VLEI.
That's a great point. And Karla, do you see any other paradigm shifts that can be made possible by VLEI?
Yes, I see that society as a whole will recognize the value of security first, always, the principle on which the VLEI was founded. To address the challenges outlined in my response to the first question that you asked me at the beginning of the podcast about trusted organizational identity. And we also see, like Cardano, our podcast hosts, that you have recently demonstrated that the protocols used by the VLEI also can be leveraged in the natural person identity space, especially to fulfill the needs of delegation and guardianship.
Yeah, I think the KERI has the opportunity to be leveraged by every single digital identity program. And Kevin, any final words to close us out?
I think both Karla and Christoph have started to comment on it. When we talk about future paradigm shifts, we're really shifting towards a world of verifiable authenticity, right? Especially in the AI-generated world. Knowing who you're talking to, knowing that an AID associated with a human being is verifiable to the point where I know who I'm interacting with. So I think the overarching shift is less to do with privacy and security, but more to do with authenticity. And I think that's a great step forward.
Absolutely is. And we are very happy to be joining GLEIF on this journey for a verifiable future. So Christoph, Karla, Kevin, I'd like to thank you all very much for joining us today. And I wish you a fantastic rest of your afternoon.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Thank you for joining us on Let's Talk Cardano. For more insights and deep dives into the world of blockchain, don't forget to subscribe and reach us at cardanofoundation.org, where you'll find extra resources and content on all things blockchain. Leave us a review wherever you enjoy podcasts. Follow us on social media and stay tuned for more coming soon.